Hi everyone. We're continuing in this lesson with the story of the prodigal son. So in Richard Lafleur's Wheelock's Latin Reader, we're at line 161 on page 289. Let's just get into the Latin. Et postquam omnia consumasit. And we'll get to what that means in a second. Facta est fames, valida, in regione illa, et ipsa coepit egere. So and after, and postquam here can be either an adverb or maybe a preposition, or well, better than a preposition, a kind of clause beginner. Some of these, what we have called conjunctions, I guess, is really what I should say, where we have an ut or cum or anything like that. So, and after, omnia, so this is coming from omnis, omne, we've got a I stem third declension noun here. So all things, well, it could be an adjective, but here we're using it substantively. What's substantive? That's when a adjective fills in for a noun. So literally, this is all things, but we're just saying all. So consumasit, Lafleur helps us out here. This is kind of an abbreviation, just like we say do not, and then that becomes don't, because it's just easier that way to remove a certain vowel or combination of letters that's very familiar. Consumasit is going to be coming from consumavisit. So that's going to look more like our pluperfect subjunctive. How is it perfect? Well, we get that consumare, or consumo, consumare, consumavi. That's our perfect stem right there. And then we add that ending, the ise, to make it pluperfect, and then we end it with our personal ending, third person singular he, or she, or it. But so after, and so because this is singular, this verb has to take omnia not as a subject, but as a direct object. So, and after he had consumed all things. So it's this word postquam which is triggering the subjunctive here. So let me erase my ugly notes and we can continue on. So, and after he consumed everything up, facta est fames. So a famine was made, quite literally, but happened. Was made by God or just occurred. So there was a famine. Is really how we would want to do that. You could do this just as easily with erat, fames, but facta est is just fine. And we can tell that facta is working with fames because fames is a feminine singular noun. So facta working with that, we can tell it's not that he was made into a famine or anything like that. No, we're talking about the famine. And we also get more about that famine. It's valida, which normally means strong, which is kind of ironic for a famine. So we might consider this a severe, a heavy famine happened in that region. So here with an ablative, object of the preposition, not motion into, but just motion within that place, or location within that place. So a famine occurred, a strong, a heavy famine in that place, and ipse, so this is going to be our subject referring back to the prodigal son, the younger son, and he himself, coipit, began. This is a nice perfect verb. Egere, and this can mean a lot of things. Literally, or most simplistically, I guess it means to be in need. So he's hungry, he's starving, he's indigent, that's part of where we get that from. Et abiit et adhaisit unicibium regionis Ilius. So, and he went away, abeo, and it's not really clear where he's going to or from at this point. He's already in a different region. And he adhaisit, so this is from ad plus hyro, which it means to, I think it's just hyro, maybe it's hyreo. Let me pause and check on that. Okay, it is indeed a second conjugation verb, ad hyreo. You can't quite tell here because what we're looking at is, again, as often, the perfect form. So he went away, abeo, so abire, and then abii, or maybe abiwi. Those are the perfect forms of go away. So, and he went away and he attached himself, quite literally, to, and this is going to be something that takes a dative. So we've got a dative object here. So he attaches himself to one, a certain, of the, so this is a nice genitive, a partitive genitive. Just like we saw with substantii earlier, there's a whole pool of citizens out here in that region. And then he picks one of them to attach himself to, just that one. So that's why we get this partitive genitive, this one of the many, and then all these people are in a broader kind of category of that region. So that's why we get this kind of chain of genitives here. So he attached himself to one of the citizens of that region. So to kind of fully chart it out, Ilius modifies regionis, regionis modifies civium, which modifies uni. Et misit illam, and he sent him. So this is not very clear what's going on, but it's that the citizen sends illam, this is our prodigal son, into, so this is with the accusative motion toward, motion into, his villa. And we talked about what villi were when we looked at the eruption of Vesuvius. This is a country estate or home. And like a kind of mansion or you think about the slave system in the American South, and you've got these large plantations where things are happening. That's similar. So he's basically signed up to be a day laborer for this citizen. And this citizen sends him into his field, we might say, in order that he feed the porcos, the pigs. So here we've got a nice ut. This is a clause of purpose. This is we might get a different way of expressing purpose from a kind of classical Latin author, but because we're looking at Jerome in the Vulgate here, we get this nice ut clause. So ut plus what kind of subjunctive is this? Well, it looks just like the infinitive pascere with a T, so this is an imperfect subjunctive. And that's going to work well with this perfect verb here. In sequence of tenses. We don't need to get into the sequence of tenses too much here, but we want to note that this was a pluperfect subjunctive up here because he had already consumed all of his property, and here it's an imperfect subjunctive because he was sent into the field in order that he, at that time, kind of present tense, as it were, this kind of imperfect subjunctive works well here. It's of course it's past tense, but it's an ongoing action, so we need progressive, so we need this imperfect in order that he feed the pigs. So I keep on saying fields. Really, it's just into his farm. It might be the best way to translate villa here. At Cupiebat, and we don't know again who this is, but we get the context, and that tells us what's going on. Normally Latin would want to keep the subject continuous, so the subject of missit would want to be the subject of cupiebat, but we see here that et cupiebat implere ventrum suum siliquis, quas porci manducabant, et nemo illi dabat. And then it's clear that he wants to eat the grub that the pigs are eating. So this can't be the owner of the villa. This has to be the prodigal son. So that's going to be the subject of our verb cupiebat. Note how we also just have all these sentences that are beginning with et. Et. And even here, as we'll see, we might want this to have been a sed, kind of adversative, changing the nature of the statement. But we don't get that in the Vulgate too often. We get this rough parataxis, what it's called, P-A-R-A-T-A-X-I-S. And this is the kind of opposite of subordination. We just get a series of descriptions in a row. It's actually pretty effective, and I mean, as we're reading it, we're not actually having a hard time with it. There's an admirable simplicity to it all. and it certainly makes translating the Latin easier, which we're not going to complain about that. We won't look that gift horse in the mouth. So et cupiebat, and he was desiring. Note that here we've been having all these perfects, and here we get an imperfect. And the reason being is the state of desire is something that's not a single moment. It's not a simple past, it's ongoing. Also, this, as we'll see, he wants to fill up his stomach. So he wants to eat, and it's much more pathetic in a kind of poetic way if he wants to do that repeatedly. If there's just a moment where he was hungry, that's not much of a story. But we're saying there's famine, he's here feeding the pigs, and he himself was desiring to fill up his own stomach. And note here we have suum here. Other Latin authors would not necessarily include that because it'd be clear that that's what he wants to do, but here we've made it clear. He wants to fill up his own stomach. Siliquis. So this looks like it might be scary with something like quisquid, but it's not. It's just the ablative plural form of siliqua, which is kind of the husk, the rind of these grains that are being fed to the pork. Because this is feminine, that's what quas is modifying. So again, note that it's feminine and plural. That's why it's a feminine plural relative clause, but then because it's an accusative object here, it's got to be the direct object of this verb, and then we're going to likely be taking porky, this masculine plural nominative, indeed, as the subject. So we can close off that relative clause there. And he was desiring to fill his own stomach with the husks which the porks, that is, the pigs, were eating. And no one was giving to him. So he wasn't getting any food. He was here tasked feeding the pigs, but has no food for himself. So we see how this luxurious living has really brought ruin upon this prodigal son. Everything was going well. He got all this money. He left, and then he both risks everything by spending everything that he has, and then to add insult to injury, we have this famine that comes upon the land. So he's made no stockpile. He's not prepared for this, which is part of the reason to have a substantia, is to be able to withstand these famines that may occur. Also note that it's only in that other region. So he's left a kind of land of milk and honey to go to work in this place where things have actually not turned out to be so well. So this story, despite its grammatical simplicity, is building up a lot, and especially when we talk about these porks, the fact that he's feeding them now will be interesting when he returns home in the next lesson. See you then.